We are live. And what we have here is a representation of a Native American medicine wheel, which will be explained shortly. Welcome, everyone. For those of you tuning in online, let's see if we have anybody yet. And nobody else online yet. Okay. So, welcome to Toltec Discussions with Golden Eagle.
Oh, sorry, I just was trying to test the fan because it's actually coming over here or not.
It might be able to be pointed down.
Yeah, it probably needs to be tilted this way.
I can't feel any air.
There, that's good.
And we have some of our usual participants with us today. We have Aurea Lux in the audience. Say hi to the world, Aurea. And then we have Little Eagle over here. And we have, or had, the star of the show, Ciclamina. And then we may be joined in the not too distant future by our special guest from out of town, Los Angeles. So, the Native American medicine wheel, which I realize you can no longer see, oh, I know what's wrong. I'm getting feedback on the volume. There. At least we know the system works. So Native American medicine wheel is a spiritual tool for accessing higher planes of consciousness. It can be used for your spiritual growth and transformation. It can be used in a wide number of ways. Melody is online. Now we've got some people popping up on the chat. We have Maria. Welcome, Maria, from Wisconsin. We have Sarah. We have Cherie. And apparently Melody, although her name isn't appearing. The way that works, Melody, if you want to be able to chat, because we won't be really checking these texting machines during the actual event, is you have to have a YouTube account, which if you have a Gmail account, you already have a YouTube account. And then you just log in, go to YouTube, and then you can chat and ask questions. And I will periodically peer over my shoulder and answer those questions.
They can text me too.
Or, yeah, text Aurea over here. She's good at that stuff. So, the Native American medicine wheel is a very, very potent tool when you learn how to use it. We were very fortunate this past weekend in that we were able to go up onto Mount Shasta to a secret place that only I know about. Mm-hmm. And now a few of my students know about it, and there's probably no more than a few tens of thousands of other people who know about this spot over the years. But other than that, it's very secret. But it's a very powerful, very large medicine wheel. And so we were learning how to use it. There's procedures if you want to get the actual most use out of the energy and the intelligence that a medicine wheel can link you to. The first thing is you have to turn it on. That's a part that gets missed by many. And I want to give full acknowledgement and credit to Coyote the Blind, who was my teacher and benefactor, for teaching this. The way we work with medicine wheels in this Toltec lineage actually comes to us from a specific Lakota lineage through an elder named David Swallow. David Swallow, through one of Coyote's other shamanic students, one of the advanced students, very advanced, who's a shaman in his own right for the Lakota tradition, named George Ramos, who goes by his shamanic name of Oso. You see him, you know why he has the name. Grizzly bears would take one look and run away screaming. Because Oso, out there in the world, in the wilderness, wolves and bears won't want to mess with Oso. He's just too powerful a shaman. And through Oso's Lakota lineage, they had made contact with David Swallow's Lakota lineage. And David Swallow has trained / sanctioned the sweat lodges that Coyote School does, as well as this work with the medicine wheel. It's also tied in with Kachora, Coyote's Toltec teacher and benefactor. And so we are beginning a lot of the use with the medicine wheel here. We have one that we haven't quite fully developed here on our land at Glen Haven. And so we use this one up on Mount Shasta for a lot of reasons at this point in time. One is the energy of the mountain. This whole region of about 10-mile radius, roughly, centered on the peak of Mount Shasta, is a giant energy vortex. And there are, like any whirlpool or hurricane or any naturally occurring energy vortex, there's little eddies that swirl off and create little tiny vortices around the major one. So this medicine wheel was basically built near one of those vortices. And it's a powerful transformation tool. And this is particularly important to this Toltec lineage because of a medicine wheel Coyote has created on his property in Riverside, California, which is a long ways away. Oh, Bonnie, can you do me a favor? Oria, excuse me. I need to send an email regarding a Spanish language teacher for some specific information. And I need to follow up on that. So Riverside is a long ways away. It's one, and there we have been graced by Ciplamina, the shooting star. That's why we have two. One is a backup. I don't know a good way around that.
You get air or you get fire. You get a choice.
Yeah.
I think we're going with air today.
Yeah, so we still have fire in the south where it's supposed to be. Coyote built on his property a very large, very well-constructed, very effective, energetically powerful medicine wheel. The whole school built it. It carries the energy of our lineage, this Toltec lineage from whence the Akadwa flows. And if you are a holder of the Akadwa, you are receiving benefits from this medicine wheel, whether or not you realize it. So I'm now telling you, you're receiving benefits because of the way the Akadwa flows from the matrix of light into the physical world. All of the major centers of Akadwa, indeed all the way down to every single Akadwa holder, is linked to this flow of energy. I've mentioned this before, and for those of you who have missed a couple of times, I'm mentioning it again. The property on which Coyote's medicine wheel sits, the property at which the group has a home where some students live and most of the major events are held, has been rented. It's a piece of property that has been rented. And the landlord has decided he wants to sell the property. This was a bit of a surprise, but at least the landlord is giving Coyote School an opportunity to be first in line to buy the property. So we're engaged in a variety of fundraisers. Everyone connected to this lineage is invited to participate. The purpose of our fundraisers is to raise money for the down payment to secure this property. There's a lot of power. A lot has been invested in this land. And this lineage is benefiting from this land and this medicine wheel at this time. I'll have more to say about time and place in just a minute. So, our school here, the Institute of Toltec Shamanic Arts, has made a pledge to donate money to this project. We've come up with about half our pledge so far. And we're going to be having a fundraiser activity in August. The 11th and 12th will be the next major fundraiser. We'll have others coming up to meet or hopefully exceed this pledge. 11th and 12th, we will be participating in a fair in Sacramento. And over the course of this week, we'll have details on our website, at the ITSA website, which is toltecshamanicarts.org. And we're going to be adding a special page to the website just about this medicine wheel project. And a link to that page from the Akadwa website. That's part of the plans for this week. The goal, of course, is to raise money. So we are participating in a very large holistic health and spirituality fair down in Sacramento. And Aurea, do you remember the name of this specific event?
Yeah, it's called the New Earth Expo, and they have a lot of them. They're not always in the same location, but this is in Sacramento on August 11th and 12th.
I just realized the camera wasn't on me for the last 5 minutes. It's on you guys.
As we sit here picking our nose.
Yeah. So that's why I always want people. We're going live now. So give that name again.
New Earth Expo.
The New Earth Expo in Sacramento. So we are going to be asking anyone who knows anything about the Akadwa to send people to that event. And if you buy some of our energy tools, if you receive energy healings, if you receive an Akadwa transmission, Great Aunt Martha has always wanted the Akadwa. It's like, oh, but I just can't find any place to get it. So bring her. Bring Great Aunt Martha and Uncle Harold and anybody else who doesn't run away fast enough. Bring them over, and then the proceeds from that event are being donated to the Medicine Wheel Project to preserve the land upon which this Toltec/Lakota medicine wheel sits, that is serving Coyote's lineage, this Toltec lineage, and the Akadwa. So regarding that, if you have questions, email us, call us, text us, hit us up on a Facebook message chat window gizmo thing, and ask questions. And if you can't make it down on the 11th and 12th in August,
Send a donation.
you can send us a donation. You can come by here to get the transmission for Great Aunt Martha and Uncle Edna.
Which is in Mount Shasta.
We're in Mount Shasta, and we just had a couple friends from out of town come through, and it's absolutely, we were told, the most gorgeous place in the state of California. And by random chance, we happened to move here. Who knew it was the most gorgeous in all of California? So, the medicine wheel is aligned to the four directions. And if you've ever walked up to a medicine wheel and looked at it, you'll realize that these lines that go back and forth across, that's not the lines that go to the four directions, it's the quadrants. Each quadrant usually has a color. I think I may just tip this camera down again.
Need two cameras.
Well, I need 3 is what I need, and I need a camera operator. So we are accepting volunteers to come and serve as camera operators on all our future events. Different traditions will have the colors in different directions. And as long as each tradition is consistent in its use and it knows why it's using them, it's all good. The tradition we use is this stone right here that you can barely see is, I'll roll it forward just a little. These are all, first off, these are all volcanic stones off Mount Shasta. And they are all in their naturally occurring colors. And in the dim light we have here in this peach-colored room, it kind of alters what you're maybe seeing on your screen. But this one is yellow. This is naturally occurring, a yellow volcanic stone. And this one goes in the east in our tradition. The white, and this is the whitest volcanic stone I could find on Mount Shasta, goes in the south, representing the height of the day, the heat of the day. The yellow over here is the rising sun. On the far side over there, the closest to you in view of the camera, is red, and that represents the setting sun. And over here on this side is black in the north, and that represents the sun at midnight.
Try to put your drinks over there.
Oh, okay. Good idea. So, the different directions also have a variety of other associations. That's some of the things that we started studying and going over with the group that we had up on the mountain this past weekend. And there's a lot to be learned over time with those various associations. So I did want to just explain this a wee bit. Now we'll go back up here and focus on Seat Lamina there.
Sit here or over there on the living paper.
Don't you have it over here? And now I would like to welcome into the studio our famous guest from out of town, Vox Angeles, joining us from Southern California, who's all the way up here to Mount Shasta to do cool stuff. I don't even want to begin to go into all the cool stuff she's done and is doing while she's here. And her energy is fantastic. If you ever have a chance to hear one of her musical performances where she combines a cadwa with her angelic singing voice, hence the name Vox Angeles, the voice of the angels, coupled with the akadwa, her bowls, and when she does her tellings in an angelic language, you should go. When she posts something, we usually post it, so if you follow us on Facebook, you'll eventually find her. So welcome, Vox.
Thank you.
Do you have that back on email?
What's that?
Do you have that back on email?
Well, right now it was on the audience, and now it's back on me. So, the medicine wheel doesn't have to be a big 50-yard diameter circle and stone up on a mountain. You could make one this size or even smaller on a piece of cloth, a piece of leather, or just set it up temporarily on a table the way we've done. And if you know how to turn it on and activate it, and then you can use it. It would, if you have it on a little table and you use it, it's best to be able to walk around it when you do your work with it. And that's something that we teach. We had our first medicine wheel workshop this last weekend. We are more than happy with just a little bit of notice to put together another little mini workshop here using the one that's not fully constructed on my property. It still works. I tested it again today. And if anybody is going to be traveling back down to Southern California, let me know, and I can get you in touch with Coyote and or his people, and you can actually go visit this medicine wheel that we are working to save.
And go to see Vox.
And go see Vox in concert. She has a CD. Where do they get your CD?
It's on iTunes. It's on iTunes, and if you just look up Vox Angeles on iTunes, it's available.
Do you have any on you?
I don't. No.
So my advice is get her CD because her voice is incredible. In natural phenomena, timing is often very crucial. One of the premier examples of this I can think of is the total solar eclipse as a phenomenon. To put it in easily explainable terms, a total solar eclipse happens when the moon and the moon's orbit around the Earth lines up with the Earth's orbit around the sun in such a way that the shadow cast by the moon, which is, there's always a shadow, but sometimes that shadow hits the Earth. And when it does, it's just a very little spot, maybe 20 miles across, a little circle 20 miles across, and it goes racing across the surface of the Earth. And if you want to experience that, you have to be in position where that spot is going to go across. Now, fortunately, with math and physics, we know when and where that's going to happen. So, for example, last year, Ori and I went up to Oregon, near a little teeny tiny village called Mitchell, way out in the middle of nowhere else in Oregon, in the sagebrush and juniper forest, and we watched this total eclipse. I'm very fortunate. That's the second one I've now seen in my life. And as natural phenomena go, I don't know that there's anything more amazing that you can watch than a total solar eclipse. It's incredible. But if we'd gotten there 10 minutes late, we wouldn't have seen a thing. You had to be in the right place at the right time. You drive up to Mitchell, Oregon tomorrow, you won't see a total solar eclipse because you missed it. It was last year. Timing is everything. In the world of engineering and rocket science, if you want to launch a satellite to another planet, you have to wait for all the planets to align just so. We know what trajectory we're capable of launching the satellite into to go from Earth's orbit out to, let's say, the orbit of Mars. We're going to land something on Mars to annoy the Mars residents. Mars has to be in the position so if we know that our trajectory is going to go like this and it takes X amount of time to get there, we have to launch when Mars is over here so that they get there at the same time, and then you can maneuver the satellite to land on Mars. If you launch too early, you miss Mars. If you launch too late, you miss Mars. And your satellite goes off and becomes a really expensive piece of space junk that sometime in the distant future, an alien will find and think, wow, this would make a really cool paperweight. When we are born into an incarnation, we have been working on our spiritual evolution for a long time. So with the divine universe, the gods, the lords of karma, and everybody else, and ourselves, we come up with a plan for our next incarnation that will give us the best chance of fulfilling the next steps in our lifetime. When we come into a physical planet like Earth, there are 12 major radiations that affect the universe all the time. Here at the level of the Earth, those manifest as the 12 rays of the zodiac. And the zodiac is regulated by the rhythmic vibrations of the various other planets around our solar system. So there's also 12 regions of space. And so this is the science of astrology. Once upon a time, in the olden days, before religion ruled the world in a very negative way, there was a science of astronomy and a science of astrology, only they weren't different. They were all one science. Astronomers and astrologers all did the same work. They all computed orbits, they all did horoscopes, they all did all these things. It wasn't until the Middle Ages when the political forces co-opted the spiritual forces. There's a lot of history about this. I won't dwell on it, except to acknowledge that it happened. A lot of things were split up. So the study of astronomy was ripped away from the study of astrology. We were allowed to compute astronomy, like when will the planet be over here? When should we celebrate Easter this year? Those sorts of things. But the study of astrology, using this information about the stars to regulate our lives, to better understand ourselves and why we're here, that was ripped away, and that had to go underground because that was one of the things that the Roman Catholic Church disliked, one of many. And if they caught you doing it, they might go so far as to execute you for daring to use this ancient tool. Even though, very ironically, I don't remember the exact verse, but I believe it's the first chapter of the book of Genesis. It might be one of the subsequent chapters in the book of Genesis in the Bible that they had at that time. It says, use the stars for signs and, I can't remember the exact quote, and divination, basically. We're supposed to be, the Bible tells us to look to the stars for this information, but the Roman Catholic Church wouldn't let people do it. We had to wait sometimes for the stars and planets to be in the right position, to put the right energies and make them available, and they vary on Earth, right? It's right now on the opposite side of the Earth, it's dark because they're in nighttime. In about 4 hours, we'll be in nighttime right here. The sun goes down, quote unquote, because the Earth rotates us away from it, and then we rotate into our own shadow. And then tomorrow morning, we rotate back out of it. So at different places, at different times on the face of the Earth, we have different energies available to us. And so we look at what we're going to accomplish in our incarnation. We choose a particular time and a particular place to be born that will give us the best chance of fulfilling our, not just the destiny we agreed to in this lifetime, but the one that's best for our long-term spiritual evolution. That essential self that continues after each incarnation. That's what we're trying to build. That's what the goal of life really is to modify this essential self. Depending on circumstances, how well we did in our previous incarnation, what we're intending to accomplish here now, we might wait a long time to get the stars, the planets all right, so that that energy is available at the earth at a place where we can be born into a group of people that will enable us to do what we need to do. For example, maybe that energy is available in the Pacific Ocean. Question?
Now just, you're putting your hand in front of your face.
I am. What do you know? Okay. A lot went in, both your own effort and the effort of all of our spirit guides and angels and the whole divine part of the universe into creating the opportunity for this incarnation. If you hadn't taken this one, you might have been waiting hundreds, if not thousands of years to have another opportunity to do your work on self and to contribute to the growth of humanity. A lot went into it. I used to work in the space shuttle program. We used to launch space shuttles. Sometimes they carried satellites that were being launched to other planets. We call them space probes, but they're still a satellite. Tens of thousands of people's efforts went into every single launch. From the people who designed and built and maintained the space shuttle, to its big external tank, to its solid rocket boosters, to the satellites, to the facilities on the ground, to the guys who go out in the farms and make, we call them farms, big tank farms, who make the liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen rocket fuel we use, to the people who man the satellite ground stations all around the Earth, who all have to be up and running and coordinating and listening all at the same time. This was part of my early work in this lifetime, was to choreograph all that. And then we test it and test it and test it, and everything's ready and everything's going, and then you press the button and everything goes and launches and deploys, and next thing you know, we've got little green men on Mars washing the windshield of our little Mars rovers. NASA tends to cut that footage out. They still don't admit that there's life on Mars. A lot went into this incarnation for you. And so the question becomes, are you going to seize the day and use this incarnation for what you planned for it to be, what you and the divine universe planned that you were going to do? Or are you going to blow it off and ignore it? Let's check the questions. Melody says the 11th is my birthday. I would love to contribute somehow. Okay, well let's talk. Give Bonnie a call. Somebody had said turn the camera around so we can see you. Thank you, Sarah. I figured that one out. I'm just a little slow on the uptake today. When you choose to do your spiritual work, There are a lot of forces conspiring to help you. You have teachers in this world. You have teachers in the other world. You have a holy guardian angel that's assigned to you and nobody else. Which means they probably spend a lot of time, like the statue, doing this, especially early in our life. And then we kind of get it, we hope. You have a lot of resources. We have a lot of people rooting for us, like coaches on the sidelines, watching us go up the bat, and they're hoping we get a hit. They're hoping we don't strike out. And they'd be thrilled if we would just hit a home run. I was a terrible baseball player. I was growing too fast, too uncoordinated. I was big. I was good defensively. They had me playing catcher and third base. But hitting, the hand-eye coordination wasn't there at that point in time. And I hit one home run. It was random. Totally random. If anybody ever taught me how to maintain hand-eye coordination, knows I could have been a Major League Baseball player. I don't think I would have been a good catcher, though. My last year, I was catching for a guy who went on to play pros. He went to AAA, one step below the majors, before he blew his shoulder out. And his slow pitches broke my thumb. So anyway, my one home run, boom, it was amazing. My dad saw it. Never again. And then I quit playing baseball. I'm going to break thumbs. I want to have a chance to hit somebody back. So I moved to football. You've got these coaches rooting for you. And you have a playbook. The playbook is called your true will. And unlike the playbooks you have to memorize if you become an NFL player or a Major League player that are like this thick, and that's just the first down playbook, the second down playbook is just as thick. The playbook for your life is very, very simple. It's got one page and it's got one item on that page, which is do your true will. The true will is listed there. The problem is you came into this physical body and you don't have that playbook easily accessible. So the goal is find where you left the playbook. You need to know what that one page says. And so we do the spiritual work. Endeavoring to make contact with our higher consciousnesses, or one of our guides, or one of our angels. And they're leaving clues all over if we would just learn to read them. Sometimes those clues we refer to as synchronicities. You know, it's all kinds of things can show up. 16 white cars every day at the same place. I mean, what are the odds? So what does that mean? And you have to figure out what it means. 3 different people showing up in your life on the same day wearing a periwinkle shirt, and you've never seen a periwinkle shirt in your life. And then they all start speaking really strange things. Maybe it's a homeless person on the street. And then buried in there, there's a message. Eventually, if you pay attention, you're going to realize you have to do some work on your spiritual self. And so you read books, you watch movies, you go to seminars, you take classes. And most of the skills in most of those classes fall into the category of doing something good here in the physical earth plane. How to be kinder and gentler. It's important. We call that the horizontal path. Everything in the physical world is important because it's our foundation. So when we start climbing our consciousness up through the higher planes, we have a stable foundation. Anybody who's ever tried to work on the second or third story of a house on a big tall ladder, or pick cherries off the top of a tree on a too tall ladder that's sitting on wobbly dirt, you realize quickly the value of that foundation that you put your ladder on. Eventually, if you pay attention, and if you do your preliminary lessons well, you start making contact with the higher level work, the esoteric work, as we call it. And there's a variety of legitimate paths of esoteric work, which is good because there's no two people that are the same, and therefore there's not going to be one path that works for everyone. But they are going to have a few things in common. And what they should all have in common is they should acknowledge that, one, you have a true will. There is a divine purpose for you being here in this incarnation. They don't say that, they're a false system, run away. Pretty much. As fast as you can. The next thing they should acknowledge is that the goal of all the teachings is to teach you to go direct and tap into the divine and talk to God, talk to your holy guardian angel, so that you get your own answers. And you don't have to rely on the guru or the priest or the minister or the local neighborhood witch or anything else except you and your own divine contacts. The shorthand for that is go direct. So that a legitimate spiritual system needs to start by telling you, yes, you have a purpose, and yes, you can learn to go direct and find out what that purpose is and how to do it. Everything else is the decorations on the icing on the cake. Doesn't matter if you go into one of the surviving remnants of the ancient esoteric mystery traditions, or if you go into Hinduism or Buddhism or shamanism or any of the other legitimate isms that are out there. You have a purpose and you need to learn to go direct. Oh, and then you need to actually do it through true will. So yeah, I guess that'd be three important things. Do your will. When we lined up for this incarnation, some of us allowed ourselves to be talked into becoming spiritual teachers. It usually goes like this. You get back and you review your life and you'll have a few complaints. Like, wait a minute. I don't mind going down there and doing my will, but what's this deal about wiping out my memory so that when I get there I don't know what I'm supposed to do? I don't like that part. Well, that's just part of the physical world. There's nothing we can do about it. Well, I don't like it. And why doesn't somebody teach us this stuff right away? Well, they were supposed to, but they didn't. You know, these teachers were lousy. It's like, well, you think you could do a better job? Well, it'd be hard to do worse. Okay, great. Stamp. You're now going to be a teacher this time. You're holding your ticket back to Earth and going, what just happened? No, it says here, you're getting this card right here. It'll take you to your birth chamber, and it says, yeah, you volunteered to be a spiritual teacher this time. But wait a minute, I just wanted a good teacher for me. I didn't. Too late. Here I am. And if you talk to a lot of spiritual teachers, the legitimate ones, they're going to tell you something similar. And here we are, trying to help other people go direct and accomplish our will. Because there's another side to this whole story. And that is, oh, it's over here. Nina, what were you doing with my thing? She's right there behind me. I think that's great. Humanity as a whole is a collective organism. We know about collective organisms from studying things like ants, other insects like bees. The beehive analogy is one that's used traditionally in the Toltec work. Coyote school, in fact. Shikoku shamanic arts. Shikoku means beehive. It was used by a lot of ancient traditions in the esoteric mystery traditions. They used it in Egypt as an analogy. A school of fish is a collective organism. And we use the term esoteric school not just as like this place where you go learn something from a teacher, but where you learn to work together the way a school of fish does. If you've never seen it, you could probably find something on YouTube now. Sometimes a school of fish can be seen from the air, and it's like a quarter mile across. Thousands and thousands of fish in this huge school of fish. And if a shark comes in from one side, the whole school of fish will turn simultaneously. And the fish on the side closest to the shark will turn at the same instant as the fish a quarter mile away, instantly, like this. There's a connection through energy and electromagnetics that the whole school of individual fish is behaving like it was one big organism. It's amazing when I saw that footage for the first time. And when we work as a human collective, this is what we have the potential to learn to do. Here on this planet, and it's probably similar on other planets, but I don't have data for other planets right now, so I can't comment. But here on this planet, there is a human field of collective consciousness. It's like a shared memory bank. It's like the big hard drive in the sky. We can all write to it, and we all receive downloads. So like your computer here starts downloading things, sometimes automatically. You've told it, yes, give me my updates, whatever. Not that if you made it, you asked, you tell me when you want to update. It's like, what are you going to do? You're going to go look at the code to see if they get it right? No, we kind of just trust that Microsoft wouldn't do anything to hurt us. Bill Gates is our friend. So that collective consciousness field, it turns out, isn't just the sum total of the individual electromagnetic fields produced by our brains. We know there's a phenomenon of constructive interference, which is a physics wave phenomenon, and it happens both at the quantum level and on the macroscopic level for waves. You can stand up on the edge of the cliff and you can see water waves interfering. You can see clouds interfering now with the HARP systems that are trying to destroy the environment. You see interference patterns forming in the clouds. And you can see, you can't see it, but you sense this with the human field. We know it's happening because if you produce a field and you produce a field and you produce a field and I produce a field, then right here in this room there is a sum total of our fields. Above and beyond that, now multiply that times 7 billion people, we also have an interaction with the energetic field of the Earth. Primarily through the magnetic field, there is a region in space outside the Earth's atmosphere where there's a type of resonance taking place called the Schumann resonance.
Spell that, please.
Schumann, two N's, I think. One of the main frequencies of the Schumann resonance corresponds with one of the main frequencies of human brainwaves. It's one of the possible theorized mechanisms of action for how the collective consciousness works, how telepathy can work. Some individuals seem to have a stronger affinity for the brainwaves of others. There's a well-known phenomenon called the twins phenomenon. So identical twins will experience events even if they're separated widely, opposite sides of the Earth. Someone will have an accident, get hurt, and the other one immediately picks up the phone because they know it. I grew up a couple years older than me with some friends, Larry and Barry. Larry and Barry were identical twins, red hair, and one of them got hurt at school, the other was home, and I don't remember which one got hurt. And the other one turned to his mom and said, "We got to go, the other one's in trouble." And they got to the school, he'd gotten cut and needed stitches or something. They got to the school before anybody from the school could do first aid, get him stabilized, and get into the office to call and say, "Hey, your son just got hurt." They were already there. It was that fast. So I've witnessed the twins phenomenon. The collective consciousness is also the vehicle that produces the mechanism of action of paradigms. Paradigm, you know, everybody knows the Earth is flat. Until Columbus sailed over and came back, and he thought he'd made it to India. It turns out he had his distance scale a little off. He didn't quite make it that far. And that ushered in, of course, the great era of European conquest of the Americas and the atrocities and all the both the good things and bad things that came about from that change in knowledge in human culture, at least in terms of European culture. The paradigm is this collective set of beliefs that everybody knows is true and therefore nobody questions. So up until 1491, nobody questioned, in Europe anyway, this idea that the Earth was flat. It was just accepted. I saw something on the internet. I think I may have saved a copy. There's all these people who go up high in an airplane and take a picture of the horizon and say, "Look, it's flat. Therefore the Earth is flat." So somebody showed a picture of a basketball. Basketball sitting there, and in the picture it showed another camera on a tripod, kind of like these, looking right at the edge of the basketball. And that one had this big telephoto lens, and it zoomed in, and then it showed a close-up of the edge of the basketball. You could see a few of the little ripples, and it looks flat. When you look at a small enough piece of the surface of the sphere, you won't see an arc. It's the amount that it changes is too small for our visual eye to detect. So, oh yeah, it's flat. But then you zoom out, and it's like, oh, it's a basketball. It's round. So that was the paradigm shift that happened. And there were always a few hangers-on, every time there's a new paradigm shift, who never buy into the new way of thinking. And they go to their grave insisting the earth is flat. There's something for them that is blocking the flow of information in from the collective consciousness. They are resistant to it. It could be that they have too much of a vested interest in the old model. They've built their entire academic reputation on the flat earth, so the earth is flat. They've made up their mind, don't bother them with facts. One of my favorite stories about the flat earth is during Ptolemaic rule of Egypt, that was where the Greeks had conquered Egypt after, what's his bucket?
Alexander.
Yeah, Alexander had conquered Egypt. That ushered in an era, I don't know how long it lasted, of the family known as the Ptolemies ruled Egypt. And in that time frame, there was a Greek philosopher named Eratosthenes who was living in Egypt, and he figured out the whole model that Copernicus would later replicate many hundreds of years later about the earth spinning on its axis, and it was round, and the orientation of the sun. And so he built two identical tall towers, one right on the equator and one a known distance away, and at high noon he measured shadows. And then using simple geometry and triangulation, he computed the distance to the sun and the size of the earth. Very accurately, considering how crude his instruments were. So that just didn't make it into the collective consciousness strongly enough for everybody else to say, oh yeah, that's the new paradigm. And then of course, when you have other people coming along and burning you at the stake for trying to embrace that paradigm, that changes the collective consciousness in a hurry. And then Copernicus, ironically, was commissioned by the Pope, one of the popes, to come up with a more accurate way of calculating Easter. We won't go into why it wasn't just the same day the way Christmas is, but it was calculated to be the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. That's when they...
Nice pagan formula.
Yeah. It's a nice pagan formula for a Christian holiday. And they were using a model that was inaccurate on how things move, because they were trying to have a model with the Earth at the center of the solar system and everything else orbiting us, which if you do the right Fourier transform, you can write a big hairy equation that will give you accurate answers, but they didn't have the math then to do that. That math wouldn't exist until Isaac Newton consolidated and produced calculus. And then Fourier took calculus and produced his coordinate transformational system. That thousands of years, more than 1,000 years later for that to happen. So Copernicus looked at all the data and he said, well, and he tested it, right, over a period of years. The sun's at the center, and he came up with the correct order of the planets orbiting the sun, and his model was very accurate within the limits of their calendrical system, knowing they didn't have accurate timepieces. It was accurate. The final refinement would come when Newton's laws and Kepler would both determine that the orbits weren't circular, they were elliptical. That was a refinement that came later. And so Copernicus knew his system was right, but he also knew it would get him burned at the stake. So the Pope would kept writing the letters, a couple times a year, hey, where's your thing? Where's your thing? I need this report. This is causing problems. And he can be, oh, I'm still working on it. I've made some really good progress. I'll have it off to you shortly. And send a letter back to the Pope. Because he was Poland, like a long ways from Rome. And he knew that his report would not be well received. So he had it done. He kept blowing the Pope off. And he left instructions. He had it all sealed up, ready to go. He probably had his own copy in his own papers. Said, mail this to the Pope the day after I die. And so that's what was done. Copernicus died of natural causes. The thing got sent to the Pope, and then the stuff hit the fan because the Pope didn't like it. It may not even have been the same Pope by that time. I don't know who died first, but it wouldn't have mattered. It's the paradigms. We have a lot of paradigms running in our culture right now that are so obviously true that we don't question them. And they're hurting us. The human organism is supposed to be advancing. And right now, our paradigms are being interfered with. There are agencies and forces who fully understand this concept of the collective consciousness and how to use advanced technology to interfere with it. Specific frequencies. There's an organization known as the Tavistock Institute who's been researching human brainwaves and in particular how to use outside frequencies to affect the brain. They started back in the 40s or the 50s, 1940s, 1950s. So 75 years ago or more. And that technology has grown. And so there's a lot of things that our society believes that A, aren't true, and can be proven to be not true, but nobody's questioning. And B, they think it's their own ideas, but they really aren't. They've been programmed and brainwashed in through these technological means. The Akado energy is one of the best natural tools we have to defend against those technologies. I'm a firm believer that every single person in the world needs to get the Akado. It's a better, longer-term solution than some of the other really good natural ideas that work, like teaching everybody to meditate at an early age. Meditation amplifies the brain waves in a way that mimics that rejuvenating REM sleep without having to be asleep. But then you actually have to remember to meditate, which is one of the things I'm going to be getting to in a minute, is you have to actually meditate. The collective consciousness is where our paradigms originate. And if we want to change human society, we have to change our paradigms. No matter how much fun it would be to grab torches and pitchforks and charge up Capitol Hill in Washington, and for someone descended from barbarians who sacked Rome, that sounds like a lot of fun to me. But no matter how much fun that would be, it wouldn't necessarily be effective in the sense that people's paradigms wouldn't change. The short-term fun we get and the short-term effects wouldn't change the long-term paradigms. So we need to change long-term paradigms. The famous, at least if you're a geeky science nerd, the famous scientific philosopher named Thomas Kuhn, he documented the fact that from ancient Greece up until the mid-late 20th century, when he wrote his thesis, that it always seemed to take 2 generations for a new paradigm to fully take root. Because there's a first generation of skeptics with their vested interest in the old paradigm, and their immediate disciples, the generation that they themselves trained and who were therefore vested in that old paradigm. Those 2 generations of people literally have to die before there's enough people coming up with no vested interest in either or, and they look at the data and go, well, of course, how could it be otherwise? Of course, the sun's at the center of the solar system and all the smaller planets orbit around it. Why would anybody have ever thought otherwise? And when we lay this data out into grade school science children, grade school age, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they get it like that instantly. They, well, of course. Why did they ever think otherwise? And so that's how paradigms change according to Kuhn's observation. But there's a political aspect of these changing paradigms. It wasn't the whole world who needed 2 generations. It was just the old curmudgeons who had a vested interest in the status quo, which is actually probably a very small percentage of the society. But because they're the old curmudgeons, they control whose papers get published in journals, they control who gets grant money and things like that. And so everybody else is fighting that uphill battle. But a huge percentage of everybody else, at the time it comes out, looks at it and goes, gosh, that's so simple. Why couldn't I have thought of that? Now, I'm sure that as soon as Copernicus released his report, scientists all over Europe and Asia who started getting able to go, ah, well, of course, you got it. Answers all the questions. And then we have a new paradigm. So most people do get it instantly. It's just that small percent, we have to find a way of either neutralizing their attachment to the old paradigm or superseding their influence and embracing the new paradigm. And that's where the collective consciousness comes in. Because the deck is being stacked against new paradigms right now. So we have to unstack the deck. And I'm perfectly okay with unstacking the deck because that's in response to people who are stacking the deck. So when we start ejecting a stronger signal into the collective consciousness, by all of us embracing the paradigm we want, and meditating on it at the same time, and with those meditative brainwave frequencies, putting it out into the collective consciousness with the intent that everybody gets it, it'll start to happen. It's been shown. that this will work. Wars have been stopped by using this technique, and then everybody runs away screaming because it's too powerful. The old radio talk show host Art Bell, Coast to Coast AM, he goes from like 11 at night to 6 in the morning, all over the country. His show was syndicated. Then he disappeared, and somebody took it over his show, George Norrie, and I think it's still on. But he did something once. There was some bad thing about to happen in the Middle East, and so he coordinated. At this point in time, we're all going to meditate on a positive outcome, and instantly, for no apparent good reason that anybody would ever admit, all the governments turned their warships around, and they all went back, and there wasn't a war. And so George Norrie never did, or I think it was actually Art Bell, never did that again. This works. And the Akadwa gives us a stronger, more coherent signal to put into the collective consciousness. It amplifies the effects of what can happen. So the responsibility becomes, and it's a great, awesome, and dangerous responsibility to choose a good paradigm. Something that will be for the benefit of all beings everywhere. And doesn't hurt anybody. Most of politics is based on fear, which I suspect most of you understand. See if we've got any comments so far. No. So that's what we're going to be doing here with this school. We're going to be starting a series of meditations. We're going to pick a time, we're going to pick a subject, and we're going to meditate with a desired outcome. Now, the personal practice part of this is, you actually have to be meditating. To make all of this effective, we teach skills. These esoteric schools teach skills that don't do anybody any good if you don't use them. So you actually have to meditate, hopefully every day. You have to journal. You have to record your dreams. You have to learn how to analyze your dreams. You have to learn how to wake up in the dreaming and interact with it as if it were a real universe, because it is. You need to be practicing with the Akadwa. If the medicine wheel process that we started exploring this last weekend resonates, make your medicine wheel. Make the process of making your medicine wheel an act of Toltec art. And then use it. Ask questions about your path. Ask a variety of questions. Use it with regularity. Participate in these fundraisers to help Coyote's Medicine Wheel, which is the hub of all the Akadwa work. Are there any questions?
Um, we've talked in the past about this 26,000 year cycle.
Yeah.
And kind of the idea of this last quarter of that being, the era of the mother, the era of the father, the era of the son. Now we're going into the era of the daughter. And the idea that really the era of the father or the patriarchy never really gave up their paradigm. And they kind of ran shot over the era of the son, which was probably supposed to have got us closer to love and harmony and those true teachings. And so it seems like even today, when you look at all the conflict that's going on politically, there's just those old bastards that are going to dig in their heels and they're going to go to their grave and they don't give a crap. Even some of this, recent stuff with our illustrious president hobnobbing around the world with, petty dictators and such, basically, denying all of the things that we have begun to know to be true by looking and observing for ourselves. And so, that according to everything that you've just discussed, there's been enough body of thought and input that it seems like that collective paradigm has been altered in some way. And
The political process right now in this country is very complex. There's a lot that has been going on in the past, and not just here, but around the world, where, and this ties in directly to the paradigm, so it's a good question, because this is some of what we're going to be working on, is there's been a model created that says, here's how the world works, and here's how it works politically, and here's how the economy works. And we're giving usually a choice of A or B. And the implication is, if you accept the premise of these questions, is that you only have a choice of A or B. And so that's part of the model that we're trying to tear down. You're going to be hearing me talk a lot more about our Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, because right now we are at a crucial juncture between politics and spirituality. The current political model, not just here, but around the world, is to prohibit and hopefully prevent anybody from waking up and doing what I told you at the beginning that our goal is. Our goal is to wake up to our true will, to go direct. Well, if you go direct and start talking to God, you're going to get very different answers than you're getting from politicians. They don't want that. The religious powers, the major religions, like the ones based near Rome, in the Vatican City,
without naming names.
Which is a different country
Yeah.
Than
than
Italy. Right,
Italy.
right. No, I know. So if there were to be any worldwide religions based in the Vatican City, they don't want you going direct either. They have a whole hierarchy and infrastructure based on you not waking up. That led, in fact, to the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther, good Catholic priest in Germany, went on his once-in-a-lifetime pilgrimage to Rome and was shocked and horrified at the corruption that was rampant there. He was trying to reform against that. It wasn't necessarily his goal to create a new religion, but he did. And unfortunately, most of the other Protestant sects based on Lutheranism or Lutheranism like Lutheranism, they never went back and checked, well, what exactly is the church teaching? And why have their teachings changed over the years? And why is so much church doctrine in direct conflict with what's even in the Bible that they allowed to go through, not to mention all the books that were thrown out at the Nicene Conference or even later. Right? They never did that. So there's a lot of religion out there that has a vested interest in you not going direct. The politics of spirituality are that they don't want you to be spiritual. And so they're constantly stirring the pot. We're in a constant state of war. We're constantly arguing about this issue and that issue, and now it's plastic straws, and last week it was something else, and then 1 month before it was something else. And many of these issues are important on their own right, but they're being picked and chosen very carefully, you know. And when too much information starts to come out that the official story is wrong on any one issue, then you're going to notice how quickly the media shifts to something else. You have to dig on the internet to find accurate information. Other sources. If you go to Fox News and CNN, and that's the only two you look at, you're not getting any truth at all. The mainstream media is literally the propaganda arm of the government. This is right out of the playbook created by Hermann Goering and or Goebbels, or whichever one was the propaganda minister in Nazi Germany. You tell the same lie over and over, often enough, loud enough, for a long enough time, and it's the only message you allow people to hear, and so they have nothing to compare it against, and it becomes the new truth. That's right out of the Nazi playbook. That's what our mainstream media is doing.
That's what they're doing now in politics.
Yeah, yeah. So we can't believe most of what we read in mainstream media or watch on television. In fact, because of the extra programming frequencies that come in with watching television, unfortunately, I have to be at this point in time saying I don't recommend you ever watch television because of those frequencies. And you're not getting anything useful anyway. It's either to distract or it's used to program. What's being programmed in? Only what the power mongers behind the governments want you to believe. Donald Trump is such an easy target for late night comedians and everybody else, and he's doing so many horrendous things.
Mm-hmm.
He's a blundering buffoon, but he's still just a puppet. Okay? There are big money power forces behind not just him, but every government.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the Clintons did this, and Trump did that, and the Russians did this, and it goes on and on and on, right? Well, they're all corrupt. They're all in bed with each other, and they're all having their strings pulled by the puppet masters behind the scenes. And if you want to get mad at anybody, go get mad at the puppet masters. Don't waste your time and energy getting mad at Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump.
So I guess that brings me back to my original statement that it seems like there's been a, even if it's just the 1% or, you know, a small group of puppet masters have been manipulating this collective consciousness or these paradigms, that we should have been farther along the evolutionary path, it seems like. You know, but this mentality of war and manipulation has continued past its lifespan. So in that way, I guess you know, we've had this challenge in the past when we've looked at what do we even want to put out for ourselves as far as a intent for the year, or, you know, for our personal lives. You know, how do we know what that best vision is to put into the collective consciousness, and yet not buy into the fear and, you know, the violence and You know, because it gets to the point where it's just one more headline and I'm gonna pick up my pitchfork and go out there and start hurting somebody. And yet that seems to be, you know, exactly what the puppet master wants us to do, because that is what has continuously perpetuated this. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that when you get to the point of talking to us more about the meditations, you know, we'll work more on that. But in the meantime, as we're developing our skills with meditation and our personal practice,
Well,
do you have anything to give us that we can work on that's different than our knee-jerk reaction and what and falling into these manipulations and traps?
the best piece of advice I can give you is, if you're going to grab your pitchfork, go after the puppet masters, not the puppets. But don't do that without taking me along, because the barbarian in me wants to enjoy that process as well. But in answer to your question more seriously, imagine, if you will, you're given a big giant blank sheet of paper by the universe that says, and a big pen that says, design the world. What do you want it to be like?
You've got the pens, right?
It becomes a little bit of a scary thought, because you have to design a world where nobody gets hurt, and you don't violate anybody's free will, with the caveat that every individual has a right to defend themselves, their families, against people who are trying to violate their free will. So the Romans come marching down the road trying to attack and steal our livestock and, you know, all that. We have a right to defend ourselves against the Romans, and we did, many of us. So when you design that world, there's an old 60s bumper sticker that says, think globally, act locally.
Mm-hmm.
So think of what are universal tenets that can benefit everyone.
Did you get the camera back on you?
It's still
On you.
on me, yeah. So we all need food, we all need water, we all need air. Now they're trying to regulate those. Oh, well, you know, we already sell you food, now we're selling you water, and next thing you know, they're going to want to sell us air. So we all have these certain, what the Declaration says, inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is where my work with the Constitution and Declaration are coming in, because I'm going to be reminding people of what those documents say. And it's amazing. I've seen a couple of clips on YouTube and the internet recently, in the last month or two, where they interview these men on the streets and they read them something from the Bill of Rights, or they read them something from the Constitution. Oh no, that's dangerous and radical. We can't have that. And I'm not even talking about Second Amendment stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just preamble to the Constitution kind of stuff. And, well, you realize that's in the U.S. Constitution, right? Well, they stopped teaching the Constitution in American public schools in the 1960s, after students who read it started rioting. That led to things like the Kent State Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have these students, these citizens, knowing their rights. So this class called civics got dropped across the board in U.S. public schools. Civics basically taught the Constitution and the Declaration and a lot of the other documents that surrounded those, like the Federalist Papers, which were a series of essays that explained the why behind the Declaration and the Constitution. So like, well, we just don't know what the framers really meant. But yeah, we do. We know exactly what they meant. Go read the Federalist Papers. I haven't even read them all yet. So you design the world the way you would like it to be. So life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everyone gets food and water and air. And that doesn't mean you don't have to work for it. It just means, you know, we're going to make it possible for everybody. Let's say we want to live in a world where if someone is truly physically and or mentally handicapped, that they are taken care of by society. That's always been my claim. If somebody's able-bodied, able-minded, and they're just lazy, then they don't get the same benefits as somebody who works hard. That was the intent of the framers of the Constitution. So yes, all men are created equal. It means with equal opportunity. If you have a physical handicap, you're an injured veteran, whatever, you should be taken care of. We should not be arguing about whether or not we cut mental health spending for people who need it. Yeah.
I have a question. So we're all pogging and when we get to the meditation part.
Yeah.
Okay, and pogging and say we want to pog for Black Lives Matter, for the immigration, for the politics, and what I noticed that there's a system. So the puppet masters are meditation will exacerbate it.
Depends on how you do it, yeah.
And what will happen is they'll get really clever and the system will develop and they'll protect themselves because they're being threatened and they act out more. It's just like that circus act with that intelligence director that they spent 10 hours drilling them. And it was stupid questions.
Oh yeah.
And,
Well, they were coming from politicians. What would you expect?
yeah, but I mean, they're all the politicians that are pro-president, they're exacerbated and they're acting out, and so they feel threatened.
Well, that's what it's going back to the fear. Because remember, the Earth is moving through this change in space-time continuum, which is part of the trigger for all of this. It's this 26,000-year cycle. So everyone is experiencing something of like we call verbs. If you're doing the high-level spiritual work, you feel it more.
Right.
If you're dumbed down, numbed down, you're on drugs, you're drinking beer, and you're watching your programming box every day, you're not going to experience it the same way. You're not going to be capable of waking up. So, does everyone know about the Cuban Missile Crisis? We're going back historically in 1962. We were that close to a nuclear war between us and the Soviet Union, right off the coast of the U.S., in the channel between Florida and Cuba. Americans like to think that we caused the Soviet Union to back down because we were bigger, badder, and more threatening. But that's not what stopped that nuclear war. What stopped the nuclear war was one Russian submarine commander in the field who'd been given the order to launch his missiles. They gave the order to fire. And this one Russian sub-commander refused to obey. He turned around, he did not pull the trigger when he was ordered to. I don't know what happened to him afterwards, if he got in trouble or not. But because of that, we didn't have war. It could be that subtle. When we meditate for a positive outcome on a situation, and the next 1 to 2 weeks, we're going to be planning We'll use these Monday night discussions to plan what we're going to start meditating on, and then we're going to start doing group meditations. We're going to be soliciting some of Coyote's other students to assist in the process. Anybody holding the Akadwa to assist in the process. But it could be just that simple, of one commander in the field who says, no, I'm not pulling this trigger, this is wrong, this will go nowhere good. That's what saved the US and Cuba and Russia during the Cuban Missile Crisis, with one sub-commander from Russia who disobeyed an order. Thank God, right, that he did. So when we meditate, the next couple of weeks, we're going to be discussing, and I want everyone watching this real time, everyone watching it on tape delay, I encourage you to start watching it real time and participating in the planning process for exactly what we're going to do. Because it has to meet the criteria that we don't violate people's true will, and it has to be for the benefit of everyone, for all beings everywhere. And we have to decide what our desired outcome is. This is quantum physics in action. Quantum physics is probabilities. All of them are possible until you make a decision, and then the physicists would call that collapsing the waveform. Everyone knows what the double slit experiment is?
No.
Oh, okay. You pass light through two slits. And as the light goes through each slit, it undergoes diffraction. And then when the waves from each slit combine, they undergo interference. And you can take a picture of that and you see light bands and dark bands. Well, that was done first with light. Thomas Young, 1801. So we've known about this for a long time. He's the one who proved light had wave-like properties. Well, then people came along and did the same thing with electrons. And now we have this concept of wave-particle duality. That's how we know there is no such thing as solid matter, that this is really an energetic waveform. And all matter displays both wave-like and particle-like phenomena. So what they did was they shot electrons at the double slits, and they get an interference pattern, showing that electrons are wave-like. And so to try and define it even further, they cover up one slit, and the electrons, and you just get a nice diffraction pattern. It's very particle-like behavior.
Is that the same thing when you poke a hole in a paper and you shine a light through it?
Well, it's the same principle, but it's done with much greater precision. The instrumentation, the slit is controlled down to very, very, very small fractions, you know, of a meter, very, very tiny. And so then they learn to shoot one electron at a time. Whether it's a particle, whether it's wave, it carries a charge of one electron. They shoot that at the double slit, and one electron at a time is going through both slits and creates an interference pattern which says it can't be a particle, it's got to be a wave. But then if you shoot the electron, one electron, and you cover up one slit, then it starts to behave particle-like. And so then they decide, okay, well, what if I just put a detector and see which slit it goes through, it behaves particle-like. So the act of observing changes the outcome.
So if we're observing what's going on in politics, that changes the outcome
Yes.
right away.
That's where we're going, is we're going to put information into the collective conscious that says, here is a better way. When people needed better methods of transportation, faster methods of transportation. It wasn't just by breeding bigger, stronger, faster horses to pull your buggy faster. First, it was the steam engine, right? We'd taken buggies and put them on rails to give a smoother ride and hook them up to horses, and those were called trolley cars. But when the steam engine came along, it didn't matter how many horses you hooked up to your trolley car, you could still not go any faster than the speed of your slowest horse. The horses were pretty much the same speed. But then the steam engine comes along, and all of a sudden you're going many times faster. Well, you look at a horse, and it's nothing like a steam engine. It's a whole new paradigm. You want to go across the ocean, you have a sailing ship. Until steamships come along, new paradigm. And then airplanes. You know, communicate faster between Boston and New York. Get a really big bullhorn, right? Well, it's that Morse code telegraph, and then later on wireless telegraph via radio waves. Completely different way of communicating that nobody who had ever studied sound would ever have thought of. Right? So we're looking for a new paradigm that may look nothing like what we see now in the world of politics. So, go ahead.
I would even venture to say that as we think about this discussion and think about what we're going to bring to it next time, that to avoid trying to fix the problems, because then you bring yourself down into the mud of what's going on, and you're looking at fix-it methods for how things are right now, rather than just envisioning a whole new vision.
Yeah.
And then we can worry about how to implement it. But the point is especially because we know things are possible, especially in the spiritual community, and that we have all these prophecies and scriptures and mantras and indications from all sorts of different groups that things can be different, and yet to try to apply that to all the things that are wrong is going to keep us down in the mud. Where we really kind of need to rise above it and see a whole different picture.
Meditate on the wheel.
Yeah. Use the medicine wheel to get ideas. There's an old adage, which I love. It says, never wrestle a pig in the mud. You both just get dirty and the pig enjoys it. So that's kind of like politics. That's why I got out of politics. I was actually pretty good at politics when I was lobbying in Sacramento for natural health, access to natural health care. And every bill we tried to defeat, we defeated. Every bill we tried to get passed, we passed during the 4-year period I was involved in that. And I just learned I did not like that system at all. And I didn't want to continue with it. There's better things to do with my time and effort than wrestle pigs in the mud. So that's where we're going with this. And the reason I rehashed and reiterated a few things today is it does rely on all of us to be doing our personal practice. You've been taught a number of skills and tools. You've been taught meditation and journaling. We haven't done a lot yet with the dreaming, but we're going to do more over time with the dreaming work. You've been taught the medicine wheel. You've been taught the Akadua. You've been taught healing techniques. You've been taught the vitriol. You've been taught a lot of tools to make you a more effective Toltec warrior, to make it more effective in your efforts to tap into your true will, and to make you more effective at doing this kind of group work to change the world. None of those help if you don't do them. You actually have to meditate. You actually have to journal, etc. And so, until I'm convinced everyone in the school is actually doing all those things regularly, you are going to get periodic reminders and periodically going back over the basics, because we all need reminders. I wish I could say I meditated 100% of every day, and I don't. I miss days from time to time. So I can even do that. But that's our goal. It's time to change the world, and it's time to take the Akadwa work to the next level with respect to human consciousness. And it's time for a new alternative. Like Aurea was saying, we are not going to solve this problem by fighting the status quo or by trying to fix a broken system. It's the system itself that needs to be upgraded to something completely new. And what is the true human potential? So the way I envision this working is the next 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about what we would like the world to look like. So your homework between now and then is to actually work on that and to come back next week with a list. And for some of you down in Reading or wherever, if there was ever going to be a time for you to come up and participate in person on one of these Monday discussions, the next 2 or 3 weeks would be a really good time to do that. For those of you from Southern California, I don't expect you to come back again each Monday for the next month. But if you were to decide to, you are most cordially welcome. Or you can tune in live. So that's where we're going. That's where this work is going for the near term. And use your Akadwa, use the wheel, use your meditation, use whatever tools you have at your disposal, whether I taught them to you or not. If it's a legitimate tool and it works for you, great. And we're going to have a whiteboard up here, or something to write on up here, and somebody will be writing down suggestions. And I want to caution you, this is subtle, I want to caution you on the difference between a design objective and a design solution. And when politics gets involved in this subtle difference, bad things usually happen. A design objective would be have cleaner burning automobiles that produce less pollution. One design solution would be to take whatever is coming out in the exhaust of all the incompletely burned fuel and put a special unit under the car in the exhaust system to burn it before it goes out. Well, that fuel that gets burned in the exhaust system is something called a catalytic converter. Doesn't help your fuel economy. It's very expensive. And if you drive over dry grass, you can actually start a forest fire because your catalytic converter is that hot. That's why when you have dirt roads like we have here on our property, we whack it down regularly so there's no tall grass coming up against the bottom of my catalytic converter. That was the design solution Congress mandated to make cars pollute less. And if you don't have a catalytic converter on your car, you can't sell that car here in the US. But there's other design solutions that would actually burn 100% of the fuel in the combustion chamber, meaning you get better fuel economy, and you have less pollution coming out your car than you would if you had a catalytic converter. Better solution, right? Better economy, less pollution. No, sorry, those aren't allowed. So that's the kind of things that happen when the oil companies influence congressmen on how they want this vote to go. So in terms of what we want the world to look like, focus on the design objective, let's say a clean, pollution-free world, but don't limit yourself to one design solution because you just collapsed a huge part of the waveform of potential that we might have otherwise used that might be of greater benefit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's subtle, but it's important, especially when we're dealing with the quantum mechanics of the human consciousness. Any other questions online? Let's see. Okay, all some really good comments. Don't worry, Sarah. You're okay. She made a wise ass comment. Now she's worried.
Oh. We know where you live, Sarah.
We do. Yeah, no. It's all good. Come back with some ideas next week.
Put all the puppet masters on an island. No boats.
What do you have against that island?
I just,
Seriously, I said benefit of all being
I know,
everywhere.
I know, I'm just
And
kidding.
there you go, polluting an island with puppet masters.
I'm kidding.
Now we have to find a way to deal with the puppet masters that's for their best long-term benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Send them back into the grid.
Well, you know, for some people, they get in such a bad situation that it's theoretically possible that is the best solution for them, is to go back and try again in the next incarnation.
Well, perhaps the whole issue is money. So, a new matrix on money,
That should be part of the discussion, yeah.
because that's what drives the puppet masters.
Money and power.
Mm-hmm.
Probably power more than money.
Yeah, so that's what we need to address.
And those are the ideas that we need to talk about. Is, okay, what do we want the world to look like? Here's a blank piece of paper and a pen. Go to work. You design it. That's what we're doing. We'll spend a couple weeks on ideas. And doesn't mean that we won't come back and add to that list later. But we're going to spend no more than 2 weeks on that activity. And then we're going to pick one. Or we're going to pick an order. And we're going to meditate on each one, you know, like daily for a week. And then next week we'll start another one. And then we'll probably close each Monday session after that with a meditation on one of these issues. And then that'll start the week of meditation. And then we'll pick a time. You know, maybe in 2 different times a day, like 6 a.m., 6 p.m., whatever times work for the most people. And hopefully you'll be able to get at least one of those times in to meditate on this one issue. Well, the issue a week. That is the plan, Stan. Any other questions? Okay. I have nothing further. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.